Chosen one, listen closely, for this is no ordinary message. This is a divine announcement, a sacred shift that has been orchestrated by heaven itself for your life. You are not here by accident. Your presence in this moment is a divine appointment set by the Creator before the foundation of the world. You stand at the edge of a breakthrough, a supernatural transfer that will change the course of everything you know. Heaven has decided that now is your time, not because of your effort or your strength, but because you are finally ready to step into the provision God has been preparing for you. The doors that once seemed sealed are now opening. The favor of heaven is about to flood into your life in ways you never imagined. This is the beginning of your divine elevation, your transformation, your supernatural wealth transfer. Heaven is declaring that your waiting has ended. The blessing, the shift, the release are here. And though his reminders may not always come in words, sometimes it is in the quiet, steady moments that his presence is most deeply felt. There is something already in motion, quietly prepared for you, chosen one. Every tear you carried in silence has been counted. Every night your mind raced with anxious questions has not been ignored. There were moments you kept showing up with a tight chest and a tired smile, doing the next right thing while your heart whispered, "How long will this last?" Heaven saw the hidden places, the private strain, the weight you did not explain to anyone. Not one moment was wasted, and not one prayer disappeared into the air. It has all been moving you toward a turning point, not because you forced it, but because God has been forming you. Anointed one, hear this with your spirit. The season where you had to push past your limits just to stay afloat is breaking. There's a difference between effort and striving, and heaven is calling you out of striving. You were never meant to live as if survival was your assignment. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still, as it is written in Exodus 14 verse 14. Stillness does not mean doing nothing. Stillness means you stop arguing with fear. Stillness means you stop negotiating with panic. Stillness means you stop letting urgency make decisions for you. You are not crazy. You are not oversensitive. You did not imagine the heaviness that sat on your shoulders day after day. The exhaustion was real. The loneliness was real. The feeling that no one truly understood what you were carrying was real. But here is what you must know. That season was not punishment. It was preparation. You were being shaped in silence, so that when the shift came, you would not crumble under its weight. Chosen one, I need you to recognize what has been happening under the surface. The delays, the closed doors, the missed chances that felt like rejection. Many of them were protection. Some rooms you begged to enter would have drained your peace. Some opportunities you thought you lost would have stolen your focus. You were not being overlooked. You were being positioned. There is a kind of alignment that only comes after disappointment, because disappointment exposes what you were clinging to. And when what you cling to breaks, your hands finally open to receive what God actually intended. This is why this word lands differently. It is not only encouragement, it is impartation. It is heaven touching the inner structure of you, the part that has been trained to brace, to overthink, to calculate worst-case scenarios. You have been living with the habit of scanning for danger, watching the numbers, checking the clock, waiting for the next blow to land. That habit has a sound, and it sounds like pressure. But today, heaven is interrupting that pattern, not by removing your awareness, but by anchoring your trust in something greater than your own vigilance. Chosen one, there is something you need to understand about the doors that closed behind you. They were not slammed shut by cruelty. They were sealed by mercy. Every rejection you swallowed, every group that turned its back on you, every environment that suddenly became toxic enough to push you out, none of it was random. It was orchestrated removal. You were not cast aside. You were extracted. Heaven saw what was growing in those rooms, and it was not safe for what you carry. Some of those people were comfortable with the version of you that overextended, over-explained, and overgave just to keep the peace. But that version was never meant to lead you into your next season. Anointed one, the delay was never denial. It was divine timing being perfected. You asked why it was taking so long. You asked what you did wrong. You looked at others moving forward and felt your chest tighten with the weight of comparison. but what you did not see was the precision behind the pause. God does not delay to punish. He delays to protect. Some blessings would have destroyed you if they arrived before your foundation was ready. Some relationships would have drained every ounce of peace you had left. Some doors led to rooms that looked like answers but were designed to distract you from your actual assignment. Not every open door is divine. Some are designed to imitate the very things you have prayed for. That is why discernment matters more than speed in this season. Chosen one, the isolation you walked through was not abandonment. It was incubation. Heaven pulled you back so it could rebuild what the world had worn down. Your identity, your clarity, your sense of worth that had been eroded by people who benefited from your confusion. You are not being left behind. You are being lifted above. And the loneliness that once felt like a curse is now revealing itself as the very crucible that forged your strength. The people who misunderstood you were never meant to walk with you into this chapter. The ones who dismissed your sensitivity were not equipped to handle your depth. That does not make them enemies. It makes them evidence that you were always destined for a different tribe. Anointed one, stop mourning rooms that were never built for you. Stop replaying conversations with people who had already decided not to understand you. Your reputation is not yours to defend. It belongs to the one who called you, and what he is restoring right now will speak louder than anything they tried to tear down. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. And in that stillness, something new is rising. Not from striving, not from proving, but from alignment with a source that has never once forgotten your name. Chosen one, let me speak to the place in you that tightens every time the word money enters the room. The part of you that opens the banking app before you even take a full breath in the morning. The part that sees an email subject line and feels your stomach drop before you have read a single word. The part that hears an unexpected expense and immediately begins calculating what must be sacrificed to survive another week. That response is not weakness. It is a pattern built by seasons of pressure. It is what happens when your nervous system has been trained to treat money as a threat rather than a tool. And heaven is interrupting that pattern right now, not by making you careless, but by making you anchored. Not by removing responsibility, but by shifting the source you depend on. You have been living as though your safety was tied to a number, as though your worth could be measured by what was left at the end of the month, as though peace was something you could only afford after every bill was paid. But that agreement was made in a season of lack, and it has been running your life ever since. Anointed one, God is funding your life. Not as a slogan, not as wishful thinking, as a shift in source. You are being moved from the illusion of control into the reality of provision. Philippians 4 verse 19 says, "My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus." Notice, it does not say he meets your needs according to your ability to worry. It does not say he provides based on how many worst-case scenarios you can rehearse before breakfast. Worry has never been your provider. Fear has never been your source. Anxiety has never been your strategy. They were only loud, and loud does not mean true. Chosen one, this does not mean you stop working. It means you stop worshipping the grind. It means your identity no longer depends on how hard you can push through exhaustion. You are being carried by grace, not grind. And grace has a rhythm. Grace teaches you to move from peace to plan, from clarity to build, from trust to action. There is a holy wind in your favor right now. You may feel it as a strange calm where you used to spiral. You may notice it as clarity returning after months of fog. You may sense it when you realize you can finally say no without guilt, because you are no longer chasing approval to feel safe. Heaven is declaring no more lack thinking, no more fear leading, no more striving as a lifestyle. This is your divine reset. Not emotional hype, but a reordering of how provision flows into your life from this day forward. Anointed one, there is a reason the anxiety has started to loosen its grip even before the circumstances have fully changed. That is not denial or distraction. That is evidence. When heaven begins to fund a life, the first place it touches is not the bank account but the nervous system. Peace arrives before proof. Calm precedes confirmation. This is how divine provision announces itself, quietly at first, almost easy to miss if you are still addicted to urgency. You have lived long enough in reaction mode, every decision measured by what you might lose, every plan filtered through what could go wrong. That posture trained you to be responsible, but it also trained you to be tense. Heaven is now correcting that posture. You are being taught how to stand without bracing, to breathe without scanning, to move without rushing. That is not laziness, that is alignment. Chosen one, I want to speak to the part of you that learned to survive early, the version of you that became capable too soon, the one who learned how to figure things out alone because there was no guarantee help would arrive on time. That version kept you alive, but it is not meant to lead you into overflow. Survival skills do not translate well into seasons of provision. They will make you hoard when you are meant to steward. They will make you suspicious when you are meant to receive. They will make you restless when you are meant to rest. This is why God is not just sending resources. He is sending re-education. He is teaching you a new internal language, a language where your first response is not panic but prayer, not calculation but trust, not tightening but opening. The old reflex said, hurry before it disappears. The new rhythm says it is held, it is covered, it is sustained. Anointed one, divine funding does not mean money falls from the sky without wisdom. It means wisdom arrives before money, so the money does not ruin you when it comes. Heaven does not bless by overwhelming unprepared hands. God funds futures by first stabilizing foundations. Pay attention to what is shifting in you lately. You may notice you are less reactive to other people's opinions. You may notice you do not feel the same urgency to explain yourself. You may notice that certain conversations feel noisy and you instinctively pull back. That is discernment growing. That is capacity expanding. That is the sign that your life is being reorganized around a higher source. When heaven becomes your provider, comparison loses its power. You stop measuring your pace against other people's timelines. You stop assuming their speed means your delay. You stop believing their visibility means your invisibility. Divine provision does not rush because it is not insecure. It arrives on time, not early enough to expose you, and not late enough to break you. Chosen one, remember this. God does not fund chaos. He funds clarity. He does not fuel panic. He fuels purpose. If something in your life has felt stuck, ask yourself honestly if your inner world was ready to hold what you were asking for. Some things had to wait until your identity was no longer tied to lack, until money would not become your God, your proof, or your shield. Chosen one, heaven rarely announces provision with fireworks. More often, it begins with alignment, subtle shifts, small doors opening without resistance, things working with less force than before. That is how you know this is not luck, it is order. Divine funding does not shout, it arranges. One of the earliest external signs that God is funding your life is timing. Things start landing at just the right moment. Not early enough to inflate your ego, not late enough to break your faith. You receive information when you are ready to use it. You meet people when you have the maturity to discern them. Opportunities arise when you finally have the clarity to say yes or no without fear. Look closely at your recent weeks. You may have noticed expenses resolving themselves without drama, problems that once spiraled now closing cleanly, a conversation that cleared confusion, a delay that saved you from a wrong commitment. These are not random events. They are indicators that your life is being managed by something higher than your own vigilance. Anointed one, divine funding also reveals itself through pruning. Some connections will fade. Some invitations will stop coming. Some dynamics will feel uncomfortable to maintain. This is not loss. This is protection. God does not pour new wine into old containers. He does not add weight to unstable structures. When something leaves, ask whether it was built for survival or for stewardship. Not everyone who benefited from your struggle is meant to benefit from your overflow. Some people were comfortable when you were overgiving, undercharging, over-explaining, and overstretching. As provision increases, boundaries must mature. This is not selfishness. This is wisdom. Chosen one, Another sign of divine funding is that ideas begin to arrive with peace attached. Not frantic inspiration, not pressured urgency, but clear, steady insight. You start seeing solutions instead of problems, pathways instead of walls. This is how heaven invests. It sends strategy before supply, so the supply has direction. You may also notice that your tolerance for chaos is decreasing. Environments that once felt normal now feel draining. Noise becomes obvious. Drama becomes unattractive. That is because your spirit is being tuned to a different frequency. Provision flows where peace is honored. Let me ground this in something practical. Divine provision does not remove effort, but it removes futility. You may still work, but your work will start producing cleaner results. You may still plan, but your plans will require fewer revisions. You may still face challenges, but they will not dismantle you emotionally. That is the difference. The wealth shift you are entering is not only financial, it is energetic, emotional, relational. You are being resourced with clarity, discernment, rest, and timing. Money follows that alignment. It always has. When the inner order changes, the outer systems respond. Anointed one, be careful not to overlook what is already moving because it does not match your old expectations. Sometimes we expect provision to arrive dramatically because struggle was dramatic. But healing is often quiet. Stability is often subtle. Security often feels almost boring compared to crisis. That does not make it small. It makes it sustainable. As heaven continues to fund your life, your role is not to force outcomes, but to remain aligned. Pay attention to peace. Notice what drains you and what restores you. Honor the invitations that feel clean. Decline the ones that feel heavy. This discernment is part of your provision. There is more unfolding than you can see right now, and it is being arranged with precision that your mind cannot yet calculate, but your spirit already recognizes. Chosen one, there is a discipline you are being invited into now, and it is not hustle, productivity, or spiritual performance. It is discernment. When heaven begins funding a life, the greatest risk is not lack, it is misalignment. Provision magnifies direction. Whatever you point it at, it will accelerate. That is why this season demands clarity more than speed. Fear-based habits do not disappear automatically just because provision increases. They dissolve through awareness and choice. The old pattern said, say yes quickly before the opportunity disappears. The old pattern said, overgive to feel secure. The old pattern said, accept what is offered, even if it costs your peace. Those habits were formed in scarcity. They are not sinful. They are outdated. You are being asked to slow your responses, not your obedience. There is a difference. Obedience comes from alignment. Impulse comes from fear. In this season, you will notice that God gives you a pause, a breath between the offer and the answer, a moment of stillness before the decision. That pause is protection. It is where wisdom speaks. Remaining positioned does not mean doing more spiritual things. It means honoring what restores you. Pay attention to how your body reacts to certain choices. Notice when your chest tightens or your stomach sinks. That is not weakness. That is information. Your nervous system is learning to tell the truth now that it no longer has to scream to be heard. Divine funding also requires you to let go of proving. When provision begins to flow, the temptation to justify yourself increases, to explain your worth, to defend your choices, to show that you deserve what is happening. But heaven does not fund explanations. It funds obedience. You do not owe anyone a performance to validate what God is doing in your life. Some people will misunderstand your boundaries. They may call you distant or changed. Let them. You are not withdrawing. You are consolidating. You are gathering your energy so it can be invested wisely. A funded life is not a loud life. It is a focused one. There will be moments where fear tries to re-enter, disguised as responsibility. It will sound like, what if this disappears? What if it stops? What if I mess it up? When that voice rises, return to what is written. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Stillness here means you refuse to rehearse disaster. You refuse to let imagined futures steal present peace. Chosen one, When God begins funding your life, your relationship with money must be healed, not idolized. Money is a tool, but it also carries memory. It remembers how it was used, how it was chased, how it was feared. Many people ask for increase without addressing the emotional history they carry around provision. Heaven does not skip that step. Money has never been the problem. The problem was the agreement you made with it during seasons of lack. The agreement that said money decides my safety, money decides my worth, money decides my peace. That agreement kept you vigilant, but it also kept you tense. Divine funding breaks that contract. You are learning to see money as a servant, not a signal, not a verdict on your value, not a measure of your faith, not a reason to panic or perform. It becomes simply one of many resources God uses to support your assignment. When this shift happens, money loses its emotional charge. You may notice that you think differently about spending. You are no longer driven by relief purchases or fear-based saving. You begin to ask quieter questions. Does this align? Does this support the life I am building? Does this create peace or pressure? These questions are signs of maturity, not restriction. Divine funding also teaches generosity without depletion. In the past, you may have given from guilt or urgency. You gave to feel safe. You gave to avoid conflict. You gave to prove goodness. In this season, giving becomes intentional, clean, joyful. You give because it aligns, not because you are afraid of what happens if you do not. Anointed one, there is also a boundary being restored around what you carry financially for others. You are not meant to rescue people at the cost of your own stability. Compassion without wisdom leads to exhaustion. God does not fund burnout. He funds stewardship. Stewardship is not control. It is partnership. You listen, you respond, you adjust, and you trust that provision does not disappear when you say no to what is misaligned. In fact, provision often increases when you stop leaking energy into places that cannot hold it. There may be moments where increase feels uncomfortable, when you receive more than you expected, when things resolve faster than you planned, when doors open without struggle. Do not sabotage that ease by searching for the catch. Ease does not mean you did something wrong. Sometimes it means you finally stopped resisting support. Chosen one, as this word comes to rest within you, know that heaven has already moved. What you felt was not emotion. It was confirmation. A supernatural transfer is already in motion, and you are standing in your exact appointed moment, the place where provision meets purpose and peace overtakes worry. You did not arrive here by chance. You were drawn by alignment, carried by grace, and covered by divine intent. The final posture of a divinely funded life is trust expressed through consistency, not emotional highs, not constant declarations, but steady alignment. You do not need to keep proving your faith. You live it quietly, daily, through choices that reflect trust. Consistency looks like showing up without forcing outcomes. It looks like planning without panic. It looks like giving without depletion. It looks like resting without guilt. This is the rhythm that sustains provision long-term. Heaven is not asking you to be perfect. It is asking you to be present, to listen when something feels off, to adjust when peace leaves, to pause before reacting. These small acts of awareness protect what God is building. Remember that divine funding is not a moment. It is a way of living, a steady partnership where you respond, adjust, and trust. Fear may still knock occasionally, but it no longer lives here. Anxiety may whisper, but it no longer leads. You are stepping into a life where provision meets purpose without struggle, where clarity replaces urgency, where peace guards what is being released. Go forward with gratitude, anointed one. You are covered, you are provided for, and what has begun will be completed.